Welcome to Medical Marijuana and Wellness. My guest speaker today is Amy Green from MMTC of Florida.
It's important to know that cannabis is made up of more than one compound. Specifically, it's made up of cannabinoids, terpenes, and flavonoids. So cannabinoids are going to be the products that are the compounds that we're normally associating with cannabis. So that's going to be THC, CBD, and then lots and lots of minor cannabinoids. Terpenes are going to be what give cannabis its smell and its taste. And then flavonoids are going to be also contributing to smell and taste for cannabis, and just adding a lot of really beneficial properties as well, anti-inflammatory, neuroprotective, and they can also be antioxidant as well.
All these components working together kind of increase the efficacy of cannabis itself.
So a route of administration is going to be any way that the product is used in or on the body. So you could have an oral product, a sublingual under the tongue product. You could have something topical on the skin. You could have inhalation where it's being drawn into the lungs. There's many, many different routes of administration.
Yeah, and each of those targets a specific area. I mean, I tend to look at routes of administration as having four major categories. And that's how cannabis is ingested into the body. And each of these routes of administration have a different onset and a different duration time. And onset means how long it takes to work. Is that correct?
That's correct. I usually tell people you'll have two different times. So it's the time that you first feel the effects from the product, and then you have a time that you have the full effects of the product. So onset is just when you start feeling it, but full effects may take a little bit longer.
And then the duration is how long it actually works. Now, sublinguals also can be called tinctures or oils. The method is to take the dropper and put it under your tongue and or swish it around your mouth. This is a fairly effective way of using cannabis, and I think it's a pretty good starter method. You see a lot of that, don't you?
Absolutely. The product is very easy to measure. You can count drops from the eyedropper, or you can use the measurements that are on the eyedropper. Obviously, sublingual means under the tongue. I really always recommend that people just grab a spoon and measure onto the spoon and then put the oil into your mouth. It's just going to make your life easier. Sublingual products are extremely easy to use. They're extremely easy to adjust your dose, and they're available in lots and lots of varieties to meet specific needs.
And when you look at sublingual drops, you'll hear of something called a ratio. You'll see like 1-to-1 or 8-to-1 or something like that. What you're really talking about is how much CBD does the product have versus how much THC it has. And then I think the other thing about sublinguals, which you might want to comment on, is you can start at a very low dose. You can start at, like, for example, the first line on the eyedropper, 0.25 milliliters, but you can then increase that. The nice part about using sublinguals, which I find, is you can also increase the amount of CBD, which a lot of people do to be able to get maximum effect, especially if they're working on conditions like anxiety and inflammation.
Yes, certainly. One of the greatest things about sublingual drops is that there are so many ratio products available, and you'll find them in every single ratio that you could imagine. So if you need something that has a higher CBD ratio, you can find that on the market. If you need something that has a higher THC ratio, also available.
Right. And we might mention it takes somewhere between 15 to 40 minutes for it to take effect, which again, it depends on your body. In my particular case, it takes about 25 minutes. And usually it'll last between 4 to 6 hours. In my particular case, it lasts about 5 hours. Let's talk about sprays, because this is, again, a very beginner-friendly route of administration. Let's talk about how it absorbs into the mouth. I think it's very much like sublingual.
It is. So you can use sprays in many different ways. The most common products that you'll find are nasal sprays, oral sprays, or metered dose inhalers that look a lot like an albuterol inhaler. All of these products are usually going to be low dose or micro dose, which is a very low dose. So it's a really easy way to start using products that are going to work pretty quickly, and just really measure in your dose that works specifically for you.
And again, it's usually 15 to 20 minutes to work and 4 to 6 hours of working. Now let's talk about capsules.
So I generally don't recommend capsules to brand new patients that have never used any cannabis products before. And that's just because you can't change the dose at all. And they'd usually be too strong in the beginning. So I always recommend that if a patient is using another product that is an equivalent dose, say, for example, they are using a 10 milligram gummy, and there is a company that sells a 10 milligram capsule. Yeah, absolutely give the capsule a consideration because you're using the equivalent dose. But at least in the beginning, it's not necessarily the best idea for newer patients. And that's just because you don't have the ability to change the dose at all.
Usually it'll take 1 to 2 hours to work, which is to be very careful. Although once they start working, they work very effectively for 4 to 10 hours.
Yeah, absolutely. And just with that long onset, you just have to be careful that you're not taking another medication, and you just have to be patient.
Edibles are the same way because, again, they have that 15 to 40 minutes, but they may even take longer. Sometimes they may take like 2 hours to work. And that's where you have to be very, very careful. Although they work a long time. They work 4 to 10 hours. Again, much like the capsules, for example, in the evening, I'll take some chocolate just before bed because it helps me sleep through the night. I get that, that 8 hours of coverage. Where if I take a tincture drop or something else, I'll get 2 or 3 or maybe 4 hours and I'll wake up in the middle of the night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and edibles are very easy to dose. They come in just about every variety that you can think of. So you're definitely going to find a product that you like, but that's also effective for you.
But again, key with edibles especially is go low and go slow. And that's really hard to do because, first of all, you want to get that effect from cannabis, but it may take 30 minutes to an hour to work, which tests your patience. And to be blunt, some of these products taste pretty good. You really want to get like a chocolate bar, you really want to grab another one.
Absolutely. I always recommend if you do pick up a medicated chocolate bar, just stop by a gas station or grocery store, pick up a non-medicated chocolate bar to fill that chocolate craving if you do have a chocolate craving after eating your medicated dose.
Now let's talk about topicals. These are lotions, gels, and creams. The nice thing about topicals is they work almost immediately.
Absolutely. And they are effective. So it's not just fast relief, but it's effective relief. Topicals come in ratios, just like a lot of other products. Sometimes that combination of CBD and THC topically really does the job for some people.
Yeah. And it lasts for 1 to 2 hours. I know that I have herniated discs in my neck and I use topicals all the time, and they're just great for that.
I describe these as a low continuous dose for anywhere from 8 to 72 hours that will go into your bloodstream. So you just want to make sure that the low continuous dose that it's giving you is one that you're comfortable with.
Some of the dispensaries have patches that'll last for 8 hours. Some will last up to 72 hours, which I think is great. Inhalation. This is where we talk about vape pens, which the reason you do that is because they work almost immediately. Although they work for 1 to 3 hours, they really get rid of that pain up in like right now. This is something that is very popular.
They are extremely popular, and it is because they work so quickly. Within 3 to 5 minutes, you know the full effects of the dose that you took. So it's really helpful for helping you get over those humps if you have a spike in pain during the day, anxiety, anything else that's going on. Just that small, quick dose can help get you back where you need to be.
You take it, you inhale for 1 to 2 seconds, blow out slowly, and you'll feel it work within 5 minutes.
A standard dose with a vape is a 3-second inhale. For brand new patients, I really always recommend a half-second or 1-second inhale. Wait 5 to 10 minutes to see how you feel with that dose. And then if you need more, take another half-second or 1-second inhale. And again, it's going up in those small steps to find that spot where you're really comfortable.
When you're inhaling, we're going to talk about terpenes. Each terpene has a different temperature setting that for optimal use.
Yeah, absolutely. Think about low heat. You're going to get a really wide variety of terpenes. When you start moving up in temperatures, you're going to get a more intense effects from the THC, but you'll be getting less of the terpenes and flavonoids as you go up in temperature. So low heat is really great for getting a full dose of terpenes and getting a dose of THC. High heat, really good for strong psychoactive effects.
with dry flower. It can be called bud, joints, smokables. I have friends of mine who say, well, what do I need medical cannabis for? I'll just go smoke a joint. Well, when you take that joint and you put that 500-degree temperature up to the joint, you burn off 50% of the cannabinoids, most of the terpenes, and most of the flavonoids. You're significantly reducing the medical efficacy of that particular product. That's the bad news. Good news is it works.
It does work. You will have better efficacy with other ways of using dry flower, though. Vaporizers. So there are products called dry herb vapes, and they are an extremely effective way to use dry flower. And they have multiple temperature settings, multiple ways that you can use them. It's just really great to be able to choose your temperatures and the effects that work for you.
I use a Mighty Plus, and I find it to be very, very effective. I set it at 360 degrees, and I get the terpene range that I'm looking for. Much, much better than smoking a joint.
Yeah, I agree. And once you find that temperature that works for you with a dry herb vape, most people tend to stick there because it works so well.
Typically in dispensaries here in Florida, you'll see a Peak or a PAX 3, and then online you can pick up the Mighties, the Gias, and the Volcanoes and that type of thing. Let's talk about raw cannabis for a second, because one of the questions that I get quite a bit is, can I cook with it and can I eat it raw? And the answer is, yeah, it's actually really good for you. Vitamin C, vitamin K, a lot of the vitamins that you're looking for. Raw cannabis isn't going to hurt you. In fact, if anything, it acts as a fiber to help your digestive system.
But it won't really give you a high if you eat it. And that's because the THC is in the acidic form. And so it's not going to give those same psychoactive effects.
Right. In other words, you have to get cannabis over 300 degrees to be able to trigger THC and CBD. Before that, it's THCA and CBDA. There are what they call homemade edibles. People make their own.
So if you don't decarboxylate your medical marijuana, you'll end up putting THCA, the non-psychoactive form of THC, into your edible. If you do decarboxylate it, you end up with THC, the psychoactive part. So it just depends on if you decarboxylate or if you don't, and what you prefer.
You can go to CannabisSherry.com to get a calculator to help you figure out what to use. I have to tell you, I make my own tincture oil, but it's cooked at about 180 degrees for 8 hours. And what it does, it gives me the THCA, the CBDA, gives me all the terpenes and all the flavonoids without getting high. And I use that in the mornings because it helps me get rid of my pain and helps me control the inflammation that I have. Very, very effective. So let's talk about concentrates.
It's just going to be different methods of processing the cannabis plant to come out with these different end products. So the first thing is just going to be your live rosins, your hash, your live resins. These are products that are minimally processed and they have strong effects that are going to last a while. Then you'll have other concentrates that just apply usually CO2 or ethanol to break down the cannabis plants. And they're doing the same thing. They're extracting the THC. Some of them add back terpenes. Some of them don't. And it just depends on the company or the producer. You have a lot of different products.
There's a lot of different options. So let's kind of run through them. One of my favorites is rosin, where they actually take the flower and press it between two hot plates.
Yeah, you end up with a beautiful colored, not very sticky product, but the effects are very strong and very quick. It is just the trichomes from the very outside tip of the leaf. It's what makes flower look kind of shiny sometimes. And it just takes off all of those trichomes and it just puts them into a beautiful, almost wax-like texture that you can use several different ways. Either, a dab rig or
a vape pen or something like that. Again, with products like rosins, you maintain most of the terpenes and most of the flavonoids, which is great. Same thing with hash. We hear about hash. We don't see a lot of it on the market, But really what it is it's really cannabis that's rubbed through a series of screens to separate the trichomes from the plant material. Then you hear about the full spectrum products. RSO, Rick Simpson oil, is an example of that.
These products include all of the cannabinoids, terpenes, flavonoids, just condensed down. It's like they took the entire plant, just took out all of the fibrous plant material, and you're just left with everything beneficial.
I do want to caution folks, RSO, because it is whole plant product, is very strong.
Very strong. Yeah. Yes.
That's why it works so effective on things, for example, like pain management, also for cancer. Resin is another one of my favorites. The flash freezing, again, maintaining all the terpenes and all the flavonoids.
Yep, you're just left with a beautiful product that has a lot of flavor, and you can use it a couple different ways.
There's also distillates, which is sometimes they feature up to 98% of the cannabinoids, which is great, but they get rid of almost all the terpenes.
Yeah, and you might find a distillate that has some terpenes added back, but it's not going to be the terpenes that were from that specific flower.
And isolates are pretty much the same way. Again, you're going to have a lot of cannabinoids, but not many of the terpenes. Without the terpenes and flavonoids, although cannabinoids are helpful, with the terpenes and the flavonoids, you get a lot more, let's just say, medical value than you would without it.
Yeah, the most common isolate that you'll find is THCA, which is just uncarboxylated THC. A lot of people add it on top of a bowl of flour or into a joint, or use it in another smoking method to greatly increase the THC level from that flour.
Right. Now, the other is, we talk about the methods of extraction. Butane is one way that they use. It gives you a high percentage of cannabinoids, but it does preserve some of the terpenes. But this is one way of making the shatters, the waxes, and the butters. And this is kind of a different forms of, one's a glassy form, one's an opaque form, and the other is actually like a whipped form.
Yeah, and truly, with any of these products, it's just finding the product consistency that you like working with.
And we had mentioned earlier, the same thing is with, there's a number of different ways like CO2 and also ethanol as extraction methods. And again, they also produce the shatters, the butters, the waxes, and things like that. Yeah, that's just a production method. Now, when you look at concentrates, there's also pens that you can use. These are some of my favorites. I'm a huge fan of the Hypno Zero over here. It not only works with vaporizers, it also works with concentrates as well, which is just great. And here's some, the packs, Lunars. Lunar is, again, one of my favorites. Same thing with the dippers. You'll find in the stores, a lot of dispensaries have, for example, the Puffco products that are really popular. And then, of course, you talked about dabbing. There's also some dabbing rigs that are out here as well.
So dabbing is the process of using either a product like a dab pen or a dab rig. That's usually going to be it looks like a very small bong. And then you'll have, it's called the banger at the end. And that's where you put your product into. You heat it up with either electricity or with a torch. Or if you're using something like the little dipper, that is going to heat up the white part at the top, and you put your mouth over the other end and you just inhale. You're going to add whatever concentrate you want to either, the compartment that it goes in for a pen, or it's going into your banger, and then you're going to inhale that product through your tiny little bong or through your pen. And they work very quickly. It's going to be just as quick as using a vaporizer.
In summary, let's talk about cannabis and routes of administration. Key is start low and go slow.
Every time. It doesn't matter what route you're using. I always recommend starting low and going slow. Even if you feel that you're a more experienced cannabis user, if you are trying a new route, you still want to take a very conservative approach when you're first starting, because you're not always sure how that route is going to feel for you.
Really get something that's comfortable that you'll use. Don't pick up a product that you're not going to use. And remember to cover the entire day. If you take it in the morning, like in my case, I have herniated discs in my neck and I have inflammation in my neck and pain, I have it all day long. If I take something in the morning and the late afternoon, it wears off, I have to take it constantly during the day in order to be able to get the coverage that I need. And I do want to point out, you can look at what they call the certificate of analysis to figure out what terpenes are in the product, which really help us be able to lead to that entourage effect that we're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I personally, I use a 1-to-1 during the day, and that's because I don't want any psychoactive effects while I'm trying to, go about my day.
Right. Exactly. So let me just summarize. There's a lot of different routes of administration. At the end of this presentation, you get a copy of the presentation, and you get a copy of the slide, and you'll be able to use it as a reference guide for the different products that are out there.
Don't be intimidated by new products that you perhaps haven't tried before. All you can do is just try it. And if it doesn't work for you, that's okay. Not everything works for everybody. It's just going to take trial and error to find that specific product that works well for you.
Take your time, understand what your tolerance level is, but again, use a route of administration that you're comfortable with, that you will use, and it'll cover your day.